Hey y'all, welcome to the Team LocoFit Roundtable, hosted by me, Laurin Conlon, owner of Team LocoFit. Each week, I am joined by one of our coaches to dive headfirst into the nutrition, training, mindset, and coaching strategies we use with our clients. If you loved the show, please subscribe, leave us a review, tell a friend, you know the drill. And for more information about coaching, the programs we offer, and additional content, visit teamlocofit.com.
Do you think, if we had a sponsor, what would your number one choice be?
Well, any potential sponsor just turned this off. They were like, you guys talk too much shit. I don't know.
Well,
do you have one? That seemed like a loaded question, like you already had the answer. So
no, I don't have an answer, but I feel like the obvious one is Starbucks.
Okay.
But I feel like that's too easy. We need a different kind of non-sponsor sponsor, because we're not going to be sponsored ever. But
yeah.
But who would
we're talking shoot for the stars.
Okay, but
not relevant.
Who we would want sponsoring us, and then who would actually sponsor us though. That's the thing.
I don't know who would actually sponsor us, but Starbucks would be a good one.
I guess. But
what about, I don't know. I hate being put on the spot.
I know. That's exactly why I asked the question.
That's how you started it Nice.
I thought of this on the way here.
And
I was just
sweating.
that's a good question.
You thought about this for a year?
No, I thought about it on the way here.
I was like, damn, dude, you could have asked me before that.
I just built up the courage to bring it up now. After just starting the. Well, we've how many episodes do we have now? I guess I don't need to know that anymore. But.
Too many. God, we have so many. I went.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
No, I know, but you think we'd be better at
Thorne. HR wants to quit.
Fuck you. That's why she wants to quit. All right, it's us. I'm back with Jill, obviously.
So.
Had to ruin the intro.
I just need to ask the important questions,
Yeah. Now I'm going to be thinking about that for maybe a year, and then I'll get back to you.
Okay, well, we'll reassess in exactly 365 days.
Because, I can't answer anything on the spot. Literally sweating, trying to think of.
Well, we're also sweating because we were walking around in the heat.
It's also 500 degrees.
After I had a whole parking debacle, and then you wanted coffee, so... Just...
it's been a good morning.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what we're getting at. But... we are talking about not sponsors because that's probably not in the cards for us, which is fine. I'd rather not have sponsors, to be super honest.
That's a funny question.
But we're talking about what not to do for your first show.
Yes.
And we have had a lot of people competing for the first time this year. And just in general, maybe just more novice in general competitors or people who are thinking about competing, these would all be really relevant topics for you. And so we have 5 main categories that we want to touch on. And the first one is don't rush your prep. Mm-hmm. We obviously have a lot of podcasts on different types of dieting and different ways to approach an off-season and a dieting phase and all those different things. But really, it's important to understand if you are doing your first show, there is absolutely zero reason you need to pick one show to do and a laser focus on that one in particular.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if it's your first time even prepping or getting on stage, there's a lot that we're going to learn in that first dieting phase, and especially when it comes to how fast you move and how fast of a rate of loss we see for your prep specifically. So there's really, if anything, I like to describe it as just unnecessary stress for the client in those first initial weeks, or even just the first half of prep in itself. I would much rather just diet and see how things move before we really narrow in on any show dates. I have a plenty of clients who I do this with this year, even being first-time competitors, where it's hey, when we're leaner and we see how things are looking, then we're going to have a much better idea of where we're landing, and that's just going to alleviate any kind of stress about rushing to a deadline.
And of course at some point you have to decide, right? You can't not have a goal, you can't not have a deadline, and it is very mentally satisfying to say this is the date. I'm putting it on the calendar, I'm telling everybody, I'm booking on myself, this is what I'm doing. But like Jill said, there are so many factors that go into, especially the beginning of prep. Some people drop really quickly. Other people really, really struggle in the beginning, and that's fairly normal. So there is no reason to say, okay, we are only doing a 12-week prep. This is the exact show that you're doing this. Now, as somebody gets more advanced in their career, can you dial in certain shows? Yes, especially if it is obviously somebody going for a pro card. There's only a certain amount of shows that offer those. So at some point you will have to pick, okay, what am I roughly doing? Where, what part of the season are we competing in? But if you're doing a first show, that's not likely on the table, right? You know, even if you have the most amazing physique and you respond really great, you may or may not decide to do a national level show after that year, right? And that's okay. But I would say that not narrowing that down, because really what ends up happening then is you really psych yourself out. You create that unnecessary show. I did that before, and it was so awful, like for no reason. And I should have just waited a few weeks. Like it literally wasn't like, I wasn't like, oh, I'm competing this month and I needed to wait 3 more months. No, it was just a few more weeks, but a few weeks at the end of a prep. So many things changed.
And you'd be surprised, like, especially when it comes to like stalling points and, the first half of that diet, if it's going to be slow. I'm one of those people too, where it's like, I'm banging my head against the wall and 4 weeks just fly by and nothing's really changed as far as like progress. But 4 weeks is a lot of time. So if you end up having one of those stalling points where it's like, you're really just grinding out and trying to make those drops, like, that's a large amount of time for prep. So, there's no need to put any kind of unnecessary stress on yourself as far as reaching a particular date, because there's really nothing wrong with moving that deadline back. Sure, it's a few more weeks of dieting, but if it's going to mean that you come in ready and you have an even better show experience, like bringing in the best package that you can, that's going to be a far more better, experience to have, rather than rushing to a specific date for what reason,
Yeah, there is no reason, and you'd much rather come to a show looking ready versus just doing a show for the sake of doing a show. And of course, again, I understand practicality. There are some places, depending on where you live, that have more or less shows. Obviously in Florida, there's a show literally every week, so you do not need to narrow that down. If you live somewhere that's either a little bit more remote or they only have a few shows a year, I understand you have to plan a little bit more. But then if that is the case, give yourself like ample time, way more time than you think that you need. That way you're able to, hey, if you're ready early, great. That's like perfect situation. But we don't want to be scrambling to get ready just because we had to focus on one show.
And oftentimes for first time competitors, especially if you're new to the process and you don't really know that much about it, like it could feel like, oh, I'm failing if, quote unquote, failing if I don't hit this like 12-week mark for prep, where it's like,
let's
dude,
please
like,
throw
that's
that
a very
fucking
short
number away.
amount of time.
Jesus Christ. 12-week prep and only be 10 pounds above your stage weight could not be like worse fucking plans, in my opinion.
Definitely not an expectation for anyone to have as like this is the hallmark for, especially
a first-time competitor. The 10-pound thing we've talked about, that really just grinds my gears, because who are we talking about? Like, just even me and you. 10 pounds is completely different on both of us.
If we like the amount of weight, I'll say right now, I'm like 18 pounds over my lowest stage weight right now. So I'm not,
and I'm 30, but does that mean that like either of us have a terrible body composition?
Like,
but why would either of us have the same amount either? That doesn't make sense.
No,
you're 5'2".
different bodies.
Like, this is so stupid.
So it's just, you gotta throw that out the window immediately.
12-week
Actually, you have to throw that out the window like 2 years ago.
Please. But people are still saying it. It's a really common thing. And that goes into our next point, which is don't listen to too many different people. This is, I understand why people do this, right? As soon as you tell somebody, oh, I'm doing a show, right? Everybody comes out. Everybody from the gym, everybody online, everybody everywhere starts telling you what to do, how to think, what you should be, what you should not be doing. It absolutely blows my mind, the audacity that some people have. Like, it literally is insane.
The audacity. I love that word.
The literal audacity people have that you have never worked with this person. You have no idea what they've been doing for not just this week, but the past month, past 6 months. You don't know their history. You don't know what they respond well to. And you're just going and giving random advice. Just
no. Unnecessary.
So unnecessary. And what it does is, as a coach, I can filter that fairly easily because
if you ask me questions, like, I'm going to steer you in the right direction,
Yes, please. We want our clients to ask us questions. But I'm saying if somebody's telling me about this, I can filter that pretty easily, and so can you, because we've been doing this for a long time. Okay, But for that person, for that client, who, especially if you've never competed before, it's very overwhelming.
It's going to be like, oh my God, like, I've never, like, is this what I have to do? Like,
should I be doing this division? Should I be doing this? Should I be eating this? Should I not be eating that? Should I be, whoa.
It's like, oh my God, I have no idea. Like, there's so much I didn't know. And it's like, no, this is maybe not great information.
That this happens a lot with, this happens to be my favorite, when clients who, have somewhat sizable legs, who maybe are in the beginning of their prep or just aren't dialed in yet, like people going, oh, are you going to do wellness? You should do wellness. Listen.
I've been in that spot before.
And there are certain people who do teeter that line. Okay, which direction do you want to go, right? Mm-hmm. But it's very inappropriate to tell somebody who you have no idea, or tell them how they should train. Oh, you shouldn't be doing this at all. Don't ever train your quads again as a bikini competitor. Okay. Most people need to do some quad training. Doesn't mean that you need to hammer your quads, but you should never just do only glutes and hamstring work. You know what I mean? First of all, talk about having a fuck ton of injuries and imbalances. Like that is a fast track to not ever moving right. That also doesn't mean that you need to do 35 sets of leg extensions, right? Like nobody's saying do that. But don't just tell somebody that you have not worked with, that you don't know anything what they're doing, and this blows my mind.
And also it's on the other half too. It's like, don't just do something that a random person tells you to do with zero context.
Exactly. Why, and this does not mean that us as coaches are all knowing, or any coach is all knowing. We are open to feedback.
This is where you're asking those questions. This is where it's like, hey, I heard about this. Can you clarify what that means?
Exactly, and that's the way that the conversation should go. But unfortunately for the client, especially who is either new or just maybe getting back into it, it can feel very, very overwhelming because they're hearing all these different things. Oh, you shouldn't be eating this food because somebody had this response. Excuse me, that's that person. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm going to be eating this because I've been. It's just consistently blows my mind finding what you should be doing here is finding the right coach and the right group before you ever start a prep, so that okay, this person and this team, they're trustworthy. I can ask them questions. They can give me reasonable answers. And then that way you can always have that as a sounding board, right? Mm-hmm. And because if you're listening to 5 different people with conflicting information, it can be really, really hard to ever understand what.
Yeah, how do you filter out what's appropriate or not?
And you're always just going to feel overwhelmed, and you're never going to feel like you're making progress because there's always, and there's 100 different ways to do things. So it doesn't mean that not.
Especially for a new time competitor, it can easily make you feel like you're doing everything wrong.
Yeah.
When it's hey, I like to even tell some of my competitors, I'm we have weekly to-dos, right? Hey, do your cardio, right? Hit your macros, hit your step count. Get your training in, manage your stress. These are our to-dos, right? The stuff that we need consistent. And then everything we see from there, as far as the data, as far as your response, it's going to fall where it's going to fall. And that's what we care about moving forward, right? And then all the extra stuff that you may hear in the gym, that's where, if we really need to address it, we do. But there's really no extra, there's no secret, right, that your gym buddies are going to tell
missing.
You. Yeah, there's nothing that's gonna be mind-blowingly different.
And that gets better with time. You get better at just telling people, oh thanks, thanks so much, and then you just let it kind of roll off.
Thanks, I hate it.
Thanks so much. But it's just I get it when people get really, oh, you're a bodybuilder, and it's all visible confusion. Mm-hmm. And it's then you have to explain, okay, I'm not a bodybuilder, I do bikini or figure. And I get people can get frustrated with all that too. So sometimes you just, that's cool. It gets easier with time is what I'm saying.
Just kind of just brush that stuff off.
Especially for first time competitors or people who are, like I said, just kind of getting back into it. Mm-hmm. Don't listen to too many people. And likewise, to, again, build off of that, don't change everything on peak week. That is one of the most common misconceptions. Mm-hmm. If you were to do anything, I would say that, the perfect peak, which is always kind of this elusive thing, right? But the perfect peak is going to be number 1. But the number 2 thing to do would be do nothing different. Yeah. Literally, that's better than having a shitty peak week plan.
Yeah.
Because
peak week is all about, maintaining that progress and just fine-tuning some things throughout the rest of the week. So you don't want to do anything drastically different. on peak week especially. You know, we're not looking to murder you or, you know, overcompensate or add anything in. Like, this is more about cruising into the show.
There are going to be a few changes.
Yeah.
Understandably, that is what, you know, peak week is all about. We are manipulating a few variables between like water, carb, sodium, you know, cardio, the training, like all of that. Like that, there are going to be things that are changing, right? There's going to be things that are more beneficial to add or subtract, no doubt. But that doesn't mean that like if you've been doing one thing, we're just going to do a total 180, or we're going to add a bunch of stuff in, or we're going to take a bunch of stuff out. You know, my favorite, are we drying out for peak week? And it's like, what? Like, and again, that is still a very common, pervasive word in the community. You know, drying out, which basically, for all intents and purposes, when most people say that, they mean using diuretics, which some people take diuretics, and that's fine. Some people, it works for them. I would highly encourage most people not to do that. One of the main reasons, aside from the possible detrimental, you know, side effects from it, especially if we're talking like prescription, you know, ones which are like really, really harsh, that causes, you know, different issues. But the thing with diuretics mostly is you can't time them. You don't just stop them. So like, I mean, obviously you take them and you're done taking them, but you don't know when that dehydration is going to stop. So it's really hard to time it. Even for weight cut athletes, we like, honestly, I mean, Rye's been cutting weight for years. He's been, you know, we've coached a lot of people through that, and we never recommend those because you can't time it. And then what happens? Guess what? So, okay, you made weight, cool. But now you can't stop pissing for another whole day. You can't even rehydrate, right? So it doesn't really make sense in most contexts. I would say that, you know, where this came from was, you know, very, very large, muscular males who had a ton of size, who, you know, when you are taking certain performance-enhancing drugs, they will have some water retention effects. That makes a little more sense. That does not equate to the 125-pound bikini competitor who's natural. Not the same thing at all. So most of the time, I would say that those things are not, you know, drying out is not really necessary. Again, if you've gotten lean enough, that's what we need to do. Now, are there certain things that happen during peak week where people just, you know, hold on to water, especially if it's like a cycle thing?
Or even stress.
You know, obviously stress is a big one. But again, the diuretic might not even help that. It might just totally flatten you out. And when you are flat, you can actually look softer. So there's a lot of reasons not to do that. But again, you know, your decision. But if, you know, obviously it's your decision. But as coaches, we really recommend not changing everything, or even going into peak week thinking that you need to change everything. You know, like there are going to be changes, but it's not going to be vastly different than what you were doing before. It's just going to be a little bit more to regulate and track, which can be annoying, but it's, you know, it's not that bad. Like, hey, you're measuring yourself. Like, you've made it this far, you can do this. And one of the other things, talking about show day. So now we've gotten to show day. We've made it through the prep. We've made it through the peak. We've done all this stuff. The fun part can feel very not fun sometimes when you're rushing and very stressed out.
So this next one is really just to be organized on show day. So you're going to have appointments. You're going to probably have, for most, early wake up times too, in order to get to those appointments. Makeup, hair, tanning. You're going to have a couple of tan appointments, especially for the athlete meeting. You don't want to miss that in case they talk about anything as far as how the show's going to run or anything that you may need to know for your division. You know, you're going to have a lot of places to be on show day before we even get to, you know, prejudging.
Before prejudging.
So, you know, it's best to, you know, go into show day having that game plan. Hey, I have my appointments laid out in front of me. I know what times I'm eating my meals. I know what times I need to send my coach updates. Have all that stuff laid out and ready to go that day. This way you're not running around with your head cut off, because the last thing we need is for you to be stressed out about making appointments or missing meetings or missing prejudging, God forbid. Right?
I literally almost did one show and I looked awful. Like, I literally looked like somebody just like put a film of water over my whole body and was like, we're just gonna add, like, that's literally what I had, the biggest cortisol dump because my makeup was not finishing. It was taking forever, and it was one of those shows where everything's connected, but it was still like you had to walk like at least 10 minutes each way. So I mean, it's connected, but it's like not, it's a pretty substantial walk. So between basically like running super, super late. I had to really rush putting my hair in because of that. I get down there, they're literally tanning me like as we're like lining up. I like barely fucking,
Oh my God. Yeah.
and then I just had to get on stage, and like literally there was not one cut, not one like separation. There was just like smooth body. Like it was so awful. And you know, again, shit happens, but especially for your first competition, like Jill said, you even if you have to like print it out. We have a lot of clients, I'm sure, like they literally
I did
print
that for
out.
my first shows too. I have it printed out. My meals are
It just
already
helps.
ready. It's like just have all that stuff laid out. You know, it's just about executing at that point.
Yeah, and we tell people, okay, we want you to eat, you know, of course it's all tentative, but we're gonna eat these early meals, at least like before the show starts.
Yeah, all that is subject to change, but we always have some kind of plan for how to attack the meals, what times I want to see photos.
Exactly.
All that stuff.
Eat this meal this time, pump up, send me pictures here, do this, and like it's all laid out, and then that's all woven in, obviously, with the appointments. And even if you are tanning yourself, you know, because we recommend that, you know, for a lot of people, maybe not I wouldn't recommend that for your first show, but even if you are doing that, you still have to plan for that. You know, like even if you're not going for a spray tan appointment, you still need to do it.
have to do it.
So like, okay,
Pencil that in.
hair, even if you're doing all of your own stuff, how much time is that going to take? Factor in, they could be late. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've had clients go, and even myself, you know, go and get their makeup done. Okay, they're behind. We have to have like a little bit of a cushion in there. We're not just like, oh, the show's starting, hope I make it. Like, we want to be done beforehand. Usually, as a good rule of thumb, the meeting is before prejudging starts. So if you can have your hair and makeup done by then, I would say that's probably a better situation. Now, does it always happen that way? No. But as a good rule of thumb, if you're worried about it, just be done by then. And then you can just kind of go backstage and just chill. And that's going to be really beneficial.
Yeah.
So
most of the show day should be like hurry up and wait type of thing. It's like, got my appointments done, and I just
sit. And that's much better.
Much
I would
better.
rather you get up an hour earlier.
Yeah.
So you're not like, I literally go through, okay, I need to like wash my face, brush my teeth, I need to pump up. Like,
exactly.
How long
like,
does all this
I
take?
always do my own hair, so it's like, I need to wake up and just make sure. Even if I'm like not doing anything different and I'm just running it over with the straightener, I'm like, I'm just gonna wake up early just to be safe.
Exactly.
It's always better to be a little bit earlier.
Oh yeah, always for most things in life, be early.
If you're not early, you're late.
Yes, thanks, Dad. Taught me that one. And then lastly, I think just to kind of round this out, this was a really good point that you wanted to make, was setting proper expectations. This goes for every show, but especially your first show. I think that, you know, obviously competing has blown up with popularity. Competing has so many positive, you know, things in people's lives. But I think that people often see just the end result on social media, especially with these like, you know, top pros, and they're seeing this and then they're expecting that, right? And it can feel really discouraging to see that. And then, you know, obviously we had that podcast with Sam about expectations versus reality. And if your expectation is so high and you don't even come close to that, it can feel like this huge dip. And now, I am not saying don't set expectations for yourself, right?
Yeah, but we have to start small, you know.
Realistic.
If you've never even stepped on stage before, hey, goal is to get on stage and bring our best package, right? That's going to be goal one, is to just do it and see what feedback we get. Rather than going into your first prep and being like, I want to win the show, I want to go pro in my first year. Like, these are really big goals, and not saying that you can't do it. It's happened to clients before, right? Where their first season or their first national circuit or second, like, they go pro, right? But that's not everyone. If you're a first-time competitor who's never stepped on stage before, maybe we get some feedback that we need to improve upon for the next show, right? You can't set those really large expectations for yourself as far as, you know, winning your national class when you haven't even been on stage before. So we have to take that in a step-by-step process, right? We have to get that experience, get on stage to begin with, see if you even like it, right?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people don't even know if they enjoy that experience until they're up there. So, you know, you have to take that in a step-by-step process based on how much experience you gain and, of course, what feedback we get too.
Yeah, and I think that the goal can be all of those things that you just said, right? I want to, you know, I want to win my class. I want to, you know, get an overall. I want to go to nationals. I want to turn pro. Those can be your goals. But the expectation is you can't do that typically in 1 year. That might be a 4-year goal, 5-year goal, right?
Yeah,
like those are literal, you know, that's a more realistic time frame. And I actually just made a post on this last night, and it was about, it's really hard to balance, but you have to train every single day like you're going to win. Every single day. Okay, I'm doing this so I can win, I can be my best. But you also have to accept whatever the placing is, because physique sports are so unique and that there are so many factors that are involved. It's not just about, oh man, if I just ran faster or jumped higher or lifted more or did whatever. It's not just about that.
It's about like, hey, like who's going to be there that day?
Everybody else. It's about, genetics, bone structure, muscle density, leanness, how you present on stage, even how you look that day on stage, right? Like, you could have this, whole great prep and then, something is off that day, right? And that happens. So you have to understand that the subjective nature of this and the amount of bodies that fit within the subjective criteria is a lot. It's very wide, especially in the bikini division. So
especially if you go to a national show and you see like the fucking competition there, it's like
everybody looks amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, well, because they had to. In order to get to a national show, you have to qualify. So you're already having the best of the best come here, and that's the whole point, right? So it's okay you're training to win. I'm training for first calls. I'm training for that pro card. I'm training for whatever it might be. But you also have to accept that there are other things, that are happening, because it's not just within your control. It's not just a target that you're hitting on your own, accord. So I think that's just really important to remember, and set those high expectations. If you don't have high expectations, if you're like, I'll just kind of fuck off and do the show,
then we're never working to get better.
No.
There's always room for improvement, and that's a good mindset to have, no matter where you're starting or where you're at in your journey. It's about, hey, like what's now, and what can my expectations be given where I'm at here.
100%. And I think it's just, have those big goals, but make sure it's within a realistic time frame, and understanding that there are so many factors in play here that it's not just like you live in this like bubble where everything will just be perfect how you want it to go. we wish, but oftentimes it's not reality. So we hope that was a useful list of things for really what not to do for your first show, or really for everybody. But this goes for everybody. But some of these things on this list get easier over time. If you've prepped before for 3 seasons, you kind of know, okay, I need about this much time to prep. I know I'm going to be about this body composition, this weight. I know not to listen to everybody, but so it does get easier over time, but especially when you're first starting, it can be really, really overwhelming. So we hope that this helped. And if you guys have any other questions for us, you can visit teamlocofit.com. You can send us an email. You can apply for coaching, check out the articles that we write, and of course, listen to the other podcasts. So thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. Jill is doing double finger guns, so that's the outro. And think about who would be a good sponsor for us, and maybe we'll reach out to them.
We're available.
Bye.